Welcome to Stress Less and Live More, which is powered by Zembrin. And that's the ultimate question. What are you doing to stress less and live more? Well, hopefully this conversation and the conversations to come are certainly going to shed more light on that. My name is Sia Sangweni, and together we're going to figure this out, powered by Zembrin. And we'll also be discovering what Zembrin is exactly, what its benefits are, and how it can enhance your life for the better. And what makes all of this even more incredible is the fact that I'm not the expert, but rather I'll be speaking to the expert who's able to make this happen and who's allowing us to pick his brain. He's the MD of HG&H Pharmaceuticals. Hello, and thank you so much for making time for me to actually pick your brain. Dr. Ralph Tettey-Amlalo. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you, Sia. The pleasure is all mine.
Oh, fantastic.
And how are you doing today? Are you less stressed today?
I'm hoping so. The idea of having a conversation about stress ironically made me a little more stressed.
Well, you have nothing. By the end of the episode today, I can assure you, you'll be very less stressed, yeah.
Because isn't that what we all want? And what an incredible philosophy to have as a bit of a cornerstone in the work that you're doing. Before we get into Zembrin, let's understand more about HG&H Pharmaceuticals. Who is HG&H Pharmaceuticals and what do you do?
All right, cool. So HG&H Pharmaceuticals is a company based in Bryanston, Johannesburg. It was actually, and it's part of Hall's group of companies, which is based in Bombela in Nelspruit. So we're proud to be part of and associated with the Hall's group of family, which is a family-owned business over 3 generations that primarily involves themselves in avocado farming and citrus farming. And what I do is just manage one of the many investment companies that they have, but I focus on the pharmaceutical or the nutraceutical business, which is HG&H. HG&H essentially is the supplier of a patented botanical extract, which we've trademarked as Zembrin, and that's used for management of stress, mood elevation, focus, ability to just help ordinary people just live less stress, happier lives.
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of things that I'm ticking off right now going yes to something that is harvested naturally and yes to something that will help me stress less and live more. So you mentioned Zembrin and something that we're going to be referencing a lot throughout these conversations, you and I. So let's talk about it. What exactly is Zembrin?
Okay. So Zembrin is just a trademark name for a unique patented cultivar of Sceletium tortuosum. So Sceletium tortuosum is an indigenous plant that has been growing in South Africa for many years. Well, and I mean, history has it as it's a plant that has existed amongst the Khoisan people well over 300 years. A plant that was initially used by the Dutchmen when they came here and found very use for it because they realized that the indigenous people, when they chewed it, exhibited certain traits that they were quite interested in. They chewed it for purposes of when they wanted to embark on long journeys, without food, water. They had the ability to sort of focus, go for weeks on end and return without food and water. And they realized that it made their limbs strong, it made their mind sharp and gave them mental energy, and they just didn't feel the need to be tired, Yeah. Then they also realized that, and I think maybe we'll touch about it a little bit later when the discovery was made, is there's more than one cultivar of this plant, right? So there is another cultivar that allows the indigenous people, when they wanted to sing and dance around the fire and have happy moments, there was another cultivar of the same plant that they chewed that gave them a sense of happiness and euphoria, right? And that has a different chemistry. So what Zembrin specifically is the cultivar that is tailored towards mental energy, focus, keeping you calm, keeping you less stressed, for you to do what you need to do. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Ralph, I now feel like I'm late to this party. 300 years later.
Yeah. I mean, South Africa is blessed with a lot of indigenous flora and fauna.
Yeah.
A lot of it that has been used traditionally and has been passed down from generation to generation. But I guess what we do at HG&H is to be able to apply modern day pharmaceutical and nutraceutical technology to be able to bring some of these indigenous plants to modern day life, and you can have it on the shelf as an appeasable product that the consumer could purchase and also experience the same benefits as if you were just chewing it 300 years ago.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that traditional significance. And it's called, class is in session now, Sceletium tutorium.
100%.
Okay,
Yeah.
A plus for me today. What's the traditional significance of it?
Okay, so Sceletium tutorium was chewed by the indigenous people for its benefits, right? It grows in the wild generally, mostly in the northeastern Cape of South Africa. And it's a succulent plant that can survive very harsh weather conditions. So it's a very tough plant. It's a plant that is also protected by law, by the government, under the Biodiversity Act, because the government realized that there is quite a number of plants that have been cultivated in the wild over the number of years, and if they don't step in, those plants could actually go extinct. So it only gives you an indication of how widely sought this plant is and being used by not only by the indigenous people over the years, but also by modern day man, more or less. Yeah.
It's quite incredible to see this traditional knowledge play out in your success. And to my understanding, there's still a lot of connection that Zembrin and HG&H Pharmaceuticals as a company still has with the SAN community.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, you are, absolutely. So when discovery was made to sort of pursue the plant, so HG&H actually belongs to, there's a meaning to the symbol. Hofmeyer, who was the late Dion Hofmeyer, who was the agronomist who brought his agronomy skills in helping sustainably grow Sceletium tutorium on a large scale, because we're not allowed to harvest it in the wild to not deplenish the natural availability of the plant. The G is Gerke. So Dr. Nigel Gerke, at the time he was living in Australia, and he came across, he's a medical doctor, my predecessor, medical doctor, but with an ethnobotanist background or interest. So he likes to study plants and evaluate the medical benefits of plants. He came across this plant while I was living in Australia at the time, came to South Africa, he is South African, and decided to pursue research into this plant. And as part of his research studies, he actually moved into the community. So there are two communities in the Northern West province, Pulshoek and Nurwe, where the actual research was done. He lived with them. He stayed with them. I think it was for a period of about 9 months. He understood and understudied what they did with the plant, how they chewed, and how it affected their plant. So that's how we developed the relationship with the indigenous people. But there is also, what's the right word? A middleman, which is a council that looks after the interest of the San people, and that's the South African San Council. So the South African San Council just comes in from a legal perspective to ensure that companies like us do not exploit, indigenous people for their traditional knowledge for commercial gain. Right. And that all forms part of the Biodiversity Act, which also the Department of Environmental, Forestry and Fisheries. I mean, these guys change their names all the time, but they used to be the Department of Environmental Affairs. Yeah, so that's the department that manages the compliance acts where the Sound Council is formed. And as part of the benefit sharing agreement that we executed with the department and the Sun Council, for every kilogram of Zembrin we sell, we pay royalties back to the communities to help them, uplift their lives,
empower them. Yeah.
We send children to school through bursaries, deserving children and parents. We also look after the elderly. And also, because of where the location is situated, it's a dry, arid place. So water is a problem. So what we also do is to also help support the availability of water through borehole installation and things like that.
So what I'm hearing you say is, if I buy a product with Zembrin, I not only stress less and live more, but I'm able to impact communities.
You are touching the lives of people who have never met you. and you see it as your own personal community social development that you're doing
Amazing.
for South African indigenous people.
So I wonder, as I take a product that has Zembrin in it, let's talk about what it does to me and my body. I wonder, something that has been in existence for so long, you mentioned 300 plus years. How do you actually standardize Zembrin in all of your products? What sort of challenges or milestones do you reach when having to standardize the Zembrin extract?
Okay, good. Very good question. So being a plant product, the challenge and that's the difference between nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals. Typically speaking, with a pharmaceutical, you're working with a chemical entity. With nutraceutical, you're working with a plant. And the problem with the plant is that you've got to grow it. I mean, that's normal. But the challenges of growing a plant is that you are exposed to the environmental conditions, which is the climate, right? So if depending on how much rain, how much sunlight that the plants are exposed to could actually affect the chemistry of the plant at harvest. So part of what we do, and that's why we have to grow these plants sustainably, is that we have to grow them sustainably to the best effort we can, limiting the adverse weather conditions that we cannot control, right? And at harvest, there are, after we dry it and we do the analytical testing, there are 4 key chemical entities that we actually do track and make sure that these chemical entities are in the right amount, but more specifically in the right ratio. Because if they're not in the right ratio, it means the plants have sort of changed to harsh weather conditions, and they will elicit different outcomes. So like in my previous explanation, the cultivar that we most specifically interested in, which is trademark Zembrin, is the one that typically has what we call a low amount of mesembrine, which is one of the 4 alkaloids that are present in this plant. If the mesembrine content is high, you will get a euphoric effect. And that's what is normally used in the entertainment industry, the vaping industry, to get a sense of highness and happiness. All right. There is also another application for that, but that's not what Zembrin is about. So Zembrin is the one that's focused on the low mesembrine content to give the effects of calmness, less stress, but more importantly, focus. So that's the beautiful thing with Zembrin versus some of the pharmaceutical products on the market, that sometimes when people are stressed and they have to go and see a psychiatrist, etc., they get put on harsh pharmaceutical products, right? Most of these products that keep you calm and focused often keep you groggy. They keep you so calm that you're so slow, or you have to sleep. You know. That's not what Zembrin is about. The beautiful thing with Zembrin is that it keeps you calm, gives you enough time to focus and just get on with whatever you need to do. And I can rest assured you will have a good quality sleep at the end of the day.
And still be able to live more. There was a friend of mine who was on some supplements, and she explained it like wearing a veil. So she could see that life was happening through this veil, but she felt like her life was a little worn and drawn out. And as you're explaining what Zembrin is able to do, that really is comforting.
You know what Zembrin, I mean, now I listen to you. Zembrin gives you the opportunity to put life in slow-mo. But you are sharp. And as you just get on and you just wither around, everybody around you is just slow-mo, but you're just batting it out, just getting on with life and doing it. And by the time the rest of the world is aware, you're done, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're on to the next chapter of life.
I love that you place so much detail and research into this. How often, I'm now trying to envision whether you actually work from a lab, whether you wear a white coat every single day. How important is research in the work that you do?
It's critically important because we obviously have to stay abreast of cutting-edge technology. So although we grow the plant in South Africa, the extract is actually made in Europe. And we have to adopt very strict EU guidances because we also sell the Zembrin extract internationally, and the standards are quite high. So we adopt very high cutting edge science technology in terms of making sure that with Zembrin is up to standard with the regulations, and particularly the European regulations, and as well as the FDA, USA regulations as well. And also some parts in Asia that have very strict regulations, like Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, when it comes to nutraceutical products.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, in my early days, I used to be in the lab, so I have a functional use of it. We do have, so we're in partnership with TUT, Tshwane University of Technology, under the leadership of Professor Alvaro Vulin. And his lab is the one that does the analytical testing for us. So every lot of Sceletium and Zembrin that we manufacture and produce, his lab does the testing to make sure that it's QA passed. And I have a very strict QA lady that's to me also who signs it off. Yeah, who happens to also be a pharmacist, so she signs it
very
off.
stringent process.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when I think about a product that has Zembrin in it, when I am down at the pharmacy or any sort of shopping aisle, even if I'm shopping online, I will now be able to actually think about the fact that Zembrin is set apart because of the traditional knowledge, the research that goes into it, and also the international research partners.
Yeah.
Is that really part of the unique offering that Zembrin has? When we think, why Zembrin? That should stand out?
Those stand out. You're absolutely right. And also, more importantly, our association with the Sun Council. A lot of
course.
In fact, we were the first company to be awarded what we call a bioprospecting permit by at the time the Department of Water and Sanitation, which has now morphed into Department of Forestry, Fishery and Environment. So we were the first. We actually have permit 0001. Right. So HG&H.
I hope that's framed somewhere.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Indeed. HG&H has always been identified as the flagship company, and that's the example in South Africa that what a successful partnership looks like. And I think we don't sell that enough because a lot of the other guys on the market don't invest the way we do when it comes to being compliant with the laws, keeping up to breast with research and science, and also, more importantly, our value offering, which is not just keeping you calm, but keeping you calm and focused. And also, if you happen to find yourself in international markets, it's available. Zembrin is available internationally. Our first market outside South Africa is the USA. We're also in Asia, so in Malaysia, Philippines, Japan. We're trying to get into South Korea, and we're trying to break into the UK and the EU. So you can imagine what regulatory hopefuls that we have to go through to get in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to almost say the kind of dancing that you have to do in order to make that happen.
Even in South Africa, even by South African standards, it's not that easy. Yeah.
So here's the almost ridiculous question, as if you haven't done enough as a company. What's next for Zembrin? What can we expect? And more so, what can we expect in terms of the impact it will continue to make in our lives?
Good. So Zembrin has been around. I mean, we've launched Zembrin, I think, about 14 years ago. It's now time for innovation. So some of the research that we're looking at now is coming up with not only other new ingredients totally, but coming up with proprietary blends, looking at some other ingredients out there that we could combine with Zembrin that could, enhance the cognitive effect or, our calming effect. So I've been doing some research. Mushrooms is quite hot now. Mushrooms, particularly lion's mane, reishi mushrooms. There's quite a number of them on the market. Turkey tail have also been identified, and I have a sister company based in Finland. Also part of the Halls group of company that specializes in Nordic mushrooms, right? And we're looking at the collaboration to come up with some proprietary blends with Zembrin and mushrooms to further enhance. So that will be Zembrin 2.0.
My goodness.
Yeah. Other than other new ingredients that we're also looking at. So this is a very R&D initiated company because innovation comes to the front to introduce new products on the markets as well.
So Dr. Ralph, you mentioned innovation.
Yeah.
You mentioned cognitive clarity. I think this should be the beginning of many other conversations that you and I will have.
So yeah, I think this is going to be a long chat.
So let's do that and let us continue the conversation.
All right.
This has been Stress Less, Live More, powered by Zembrin. I implore you to visit the Zembrin website, www.zembrin.com, to get more information on this and to get more equipped on this incredible information. And so how about you also stick around and stay tuned to more conversations like these, this incredible series powered by Zembrin. On our next episode, as Dr. Rolf was alluding, we will discuss cognitive clarity. How exactly can we start thinking sharper and making sure that we stress less and live more? Fantastic.
How was it?